My name is Katarzyna Szymilewicz. I'm running an NGO called the Panoptykon Foundation. It's a Polish organization that deals with human rights in the context of surveillance. I'm also vice president of European Digital Rights, which is a coalition of organizations fighting for digital rights. So my relationship to online activism is not direct. We are not campaigning organizations, but quite often we try to engage citizens in advocacy, so in our attempts to influence public policy, decision makers, laws, and so on. Fortunately, there are people here who know much more about online activism than me, and that's why they sit in this place. So our panelists, let me introduce them very quickly, using my notes because there is so much to say. Marek Tuszyński, co-founder and creative director of Tactical Tech. Sorry, I'm losing notes. A restless producer of various creative and social interventions. Darko Berkan, founding president of Zašto Ne, which is Why Not in English, a Sarajevo-based non-governmental organization that promotes civic activism, government accountability, and the use of digital media in deepening democracy in Bosnia-Herzegovina. Hello. And last but not least, Arzu Gejbulayeva, correspondent, social media trainer, one of the few critical English language bloggers writing on Azerbaijan, works for Imagine Center for Conflict Transformation. There is a lot more to say, and you can read all this on the website, which I encourage you to do so. But now let me move to our topic, which is actually the question: what are the reach and what are the limits of online activism? So I would say I want to discuss with you online activism and political change, how these two ideas relate to each other. And I decided to pose this question because it's a question for me, mostly because I'm frustrated and worried by the fact that mainstream media in particular, they tend to present social media, various technological tools as a universal fix, as a one-size-fits-all solution for advocacy, for campaigning, no matter what the purpose is and what the scope is, as if, you know, the mere fact that people can now use Twitter or Facebook means that they are able of keeping their governments more accountable, of removing authoritarian regimes, of making revolutions even. Of course, I'm referring now to how Arab Spring was presented in Western media. And I know from many people involved in that movement that they were particularly frustrated with that kind of representation. So I'm here also speaking on their behalf. In European context, we had big ACTA campaign, which I hope many of you took part in and definitely have heard of. We had many other campaigns, and I'm sure our panelists will give these examples, where obviously people were using social media and they were using these new technologies. But the big question was, to what extent the tools they used determined the results, even it was such successful as ACTA was, or such important as Arab Spring was, because of course the results are various and they are dynamic. It's very difficult to judge them. But yes, the question is, what really is the impact of these tools and what dangers they pose? There are many critical voices pointing that the same tools can be used to control people, to keep them busy with tweeting and having fun simply on social media, but actually preventing the real political change, right? So I would really like to know what you think and what our panelists think. You more or less know what I think now. But because it's discussion, I would really like to start with a quick poll or survey. So I would like to ask you, do you believe that social media, online activism is the best tool we have now for political change? And I can give you 3 answers and please choose one. Yes, no, it's more complicated. So who thinks that it is the best tool without any additions? Wow. Who thinks it's not the best tool? Okay, and who thinks it's complicated? Well, I must admit I expected this, so we really can have a good discussion. But okay, I still don't know why you have chosen this answer, right? So if you can give me, off the top of your head, your first reason why you selected the third option, we have microphone here, I would be very grateful. Just a few exact reasons, please give it to us. Don't be afraid, it's discussion.
Maybe it's they are powerful. Does it work? Yeah. I think that they are extremely powerful as long as they are not the end on its own. When they lead to other steps and when they serve for coordination, for information, absolutely. And this is a scale we didn't know before, but it's obviously not what we want to achieve, just to have the exchange of information.
Many thanks. Any other reasons?
Briefly, because looking at a politician in the eyes, telling him or her why he or she is wrong is 10,000 times more efficient than sending an email.
Okay, I like this answer.
Me now. Oh, okay. I would say, so if we're thinking about tool, I would think of it as a means to the end, and I would say rather than putting the emphasis on the actual technology that we might use, perhaps it's more about putting the focus on the people, because it's the people behind, which is the means.
Okay. Anybody else would like to share quickly opinion, reason? Okay, I won't terrorize you more, but we will get back to this. So now there is a chance for my guests here to express their opinion. Of course, feel free to comment on what I said, but also feel free to say just whatever you think is important for the topic. But please do not forget to mention what is your personal definition of online activism. How is it a tool? How you define it? And your personal definition of political change. How we see that something has this effect, how we judge the success, right? And of course refer to your experience because I know you have plenty. So let's start maybe with Marek. He's the closest, or however you want, of course.
Hello, hi, can you hear me? Okay. Yes, I can't sit when I speak. I'm from the old school of education. I can't really talk to people when I sit down. I was thinking of hiding behind the sofa, but I probably won't. So my answer, I have 5 minutes or something like that or less, is quite elaborate. So I would like to talk first of all that online activism is not a tool, first of all. It can be digital, it can be whatever you call it, activism. Activism per se is what's very important, and you can use different kind of tools that you can connect them to whatever you want. Internet is the thing that is important, I think, here. And everybody's an activist. Like, we all are curious, we all would like to understand things, we all would like to know why things are happening. And when we are not able to do that, then we become more active, some of us. And that's where we turn to be activists from being just curious. And when you talk about political change, in the description of this panel, we were informed that there are kind of two types of activism. One of them is when you are a rebel and you engage in a spring in Arab countries, or you act against central legislation. But there are other kinds of activism that are equally important. And with activism, you can change something on a small scale, where you don't have to change the whole system, you don't have to change those who are in power, where you can basically influence somebody to behave differently. And you don't have to be extremely political, though everything we do in some sense is political. So dissent and resistance and rebel are different kinds of activism. And now when you're an activist, what you're trying to do, you try to have an influence, and that doesn't have to be influence against a political power or a corporation or whoever else. You want to basically convert somebody from one thing to another. And in some sense that may be changing their behavior, in other sense it's changing some legislation, in another sense it's basically throwing them out of their office. And this influence is very important because very often, as Jeremy said, in some cases you have a direct access to those people who you can influence directly, looking them into the eyes. But in many cases you can't, and for that you need to mobilize and organize people and so on. And that's where online and internet becomes very important, because it can help you with that. But before you try to do and move towards influence, you need to have something to be able to influence people. And for me, for us, where I'm coming from, tactical tech, is the important factor is evidence. There's a lot of activism around, you know, sympathizing with people, helping them getting out of prison and so on. But if you do a try to have influence in a political sense, you need to have a proof and evidence that what you're proposing is better than what's out there. And for influence with evidence, you can do different things. You can collect this evidence, and for that you can use different tools, not necessarily they have to be online or internet. Collection is coming from where already that information or evidence exists, so all the open data and other movements are very important here. Or you already have the data but nobody's listening to you, and then you have to curate that evidence, that information, and that's when different tactics and tools are also very important. But what happens when you don't have access to the evidence or you're forbidden from, so you're not allowed, you censor, etc. Then you have to investigate and find other ways, not necessarily direct, to be able to find or create the evidence. And that's another word, because evidence is not online. Evidence is something that exists in the real world. So we shouldn't forget about the link between online and not online. So the last thing I would like to say, when technology comes here, that is very important, is that it deprofessionalizes access to evidence. So you don't have to be scientist, lawyer, you don't have to be investigative journalist to be able to use evidence. The second thing is the technology demonopolize access to evidence. So it's not anymore government that owns access to maps and can show you how things are. You can create your own map, for example. And the last thing, time is different. And I just give an example from the book, The Machine That Kills Secrets, where Greenberg gives an example of Ellsberg, who leaked information about Vietnam War. It took him 2 years to copy 7,000 pages, and it took Manning basically 2 minutes to copy 700,000 documents using new media while listening to Lady Gaga on his CD. And if Ellsberg had to do it himself, using his Xerox machine in 1969, would take him 18 years, the same process. And the first one is a hero, the other one is a terrorist. And so I would like to just finish that with the new technology, if it is online or not, that depends if you connect it, that brings also risks. And the risks are quite vital. So when you become an activist, you should also look at what's in the default. We say often that the devil is in the default. When you open your mobile or your laptop for the first time, you're already defining yourself from that point. Not later when you decide to be anonymous. That's already too late for that. And the last thing, am I really abusing my time now? It's okay, cool. So the last thing I wanted to say is that the virtual world is even more beta than the real world. I mean, the real world is beta because we don't know when the asteroid is going to hit us anyway. But the virtual one is beta because the internet was created as a totally free space without any constraints and anything. Even security wasn't embodied in it. And now everybody is trying to claim that territory. And we often use online as a synonym for social networks and so on. And those are colonizers that are colonizing this space and dictating us the way we should act there. That's what I would say. So that's answer your question. I don't know.
Well, it only proves me that the discussion should be much longer than what we have today. Let me only clarify, because I think I put it on the same level, social media and online activism. Of course, that wasn't what I meant. We have to, I totally agree with what has been said here, that technology is a tool. I mean, we cannot think of it in any other way. While online activism, it's a kind of phenomenon, it's already a movement, it's already an activity, yet I do think it can also be perceived as a tool, right? So maybe this is a perspective I would like to give you as a food for thought, to what extent we see online activism as a goal in itself. So once we see people being mobilized, clicking, engaging, that's already success. Or we judge success only after something happens out of this, as a result of this process. So I see a lot of correspondence with Arzu, so maybe Arzu, now please give us your ideas, your thoughts.
Yes, I kind of would like to start from where you ended just now. I think it really depends on the country and the context, whether the success, where you start counting the success, where people start clicking, or when actually people start engaging in offline or online. In a country like Azerbaijan, it's a success both ways, because the engagement has been kind of asleep for such a long time, that now, especially in the last few years, you've had a lot more interest in participation, in active participation. And whether online or offline, this has been some kind of phenomenon. All of this perhaps started in 2009 when we had a case of two bloggers. I don't know how many of you know about this, but the case of donkey bloggers. Emin Milli, who was supposed to be here now, speaking instead of me, who was actually arrested, detained in administrative detention. And a friend of ours, Adnan, did this video of a donkey mocking the government because the Azerbaijani government bought a donkey worth 43,000 euros, 2 donkeys, each donkey 43,000 euros for agricultural purposes. And so the guys did a mock video with someone wearing a donkey costume and giving a press conference. And this was a video of it was a joke, of course. Donkey saying, if I was a donkey, I would like to be born in Azerbaijan because Azerbaijan is a perfect place for donkeys, and donkeys can do whatever they want here, and things like that. And this kind of initiated this wave of people getting online and starting to express themselves a little bit more openly, especially after the protests that we had in 2003 and 2005, when thousands marched the streets after the parliamentary and presidential elections, but nothing really changed the results of the elections. And so it has become, again, it's offline and online, the phenomenon itself. And as a blogger myself, I started writing in 2008, thinking that this is just a blog where I'm going to write about my job, about my experiences, and shortly after I realized that, wait a second, I have this tool in my hands that I can actually write about Azerbaijan in a country where you have very limited free media, and I have access to all this information that I could put online and share it with not only people at home but also international audience. I wasn't planning on specifically writing in English when I first started it, but it turned out to be a significant source of information much later, especially for international organizations like Freedom House or Human Rights Watch, looking for information about my country and what was happening there. And that's how it kind of went on. And I look at it as a tool. I always consider it as a tool. And I don't call myself an online activist because I feel like I'm not always involved. That I only write when there's this emptiness of gap of information where I feel like I need to fill. And I feel like there are a lot more active people in the country who are doing all the job on the ground in terms of organizing, in terms of raising awareness, like it was the case just early this month when a conscript body was returned to his family, and the medical report that accompanied the body said that he had a heart failure, and this guy was 19 years old, and he went to military service a couple months ago completely healthy, except when the family went public with the photographs of the body that openly showed body injuries and physical injuries, and distributed them on social networks. It went, it just went on, and people started sharing the photographs. People started saying, okay, we need to do something. And this was the reason of this activism, not just online, but also offline, because people started sharing the news and said, okay, we have to do something. Sorry, I'm going with time, but yes, I'll just finalize by saying this. I'll probably talk about this more if you have any questions. But yeah, I feel like I see it as a tool, and it's a phenomenon in Azerbaijan in terms of activism in general. But online activists also face certain difficulties, and they can get arrested, like it was the case with Emin and Adnan, the donkey bloggers. Thank you.
Thanks. I'm also bad in keeping time because I was listening to you like, it's so interesting. Oh, damn it. Thank you. Okay, Darko, now you have a very comfortable situation because you have heard so much.
Because everything is clear. Yeah, then what to say? Actually, I want to start by answering your question myself, and I agree it's complicated, but I want to give my personal perspective, like why it's complicated for me. For me, it's complicated because my mother can connect to the internet, but my father cannot. And it's as simple as that, like that's why it's complicated for me to say that it's like the final fix, like it's not the final fix as long as my father cannot connect to the internet. I mean, somebody has to send the message to him. You know, even in the ideal settings where actually, you know, like everybody's connected, everybody's on all the information, you know, like I'm doubtful about that it's a final fix. But we are living in a world that where my mother can connect and my father can, I mean, doesn't know how to. So like if I send my mother the message about the new campaign we are just starting actually today about some constitutional discrimination in Bosnia, that's actually online, starting online. Somebody needs to move it from the online space into the offline space in order for my father to grasp the campaign. And actually it's going to be my mother. She's going to tell him, oh, come here, look what they are doing. And that's basically, you know, how it's done. It needs, I personally think that online activism is a great tool, and I think that, I mean, not online activism, online tools that we've been given with internet are great for many reasons, and we can go into in depth talking about it. But actually, I think you need that final translation from the internet, which is a virtual world in terms of you know, like how the society is functioning, into the real world in order to make a change. You need to like actually make the final translation in everything you do. I agree that, you know, like for instance, speaking of Bosnia, it's a change just that internet is there, because, you know, like we are a split society in all of its forms. You know, like we got three societies. As politically, we got three societies. In terms of public discourse, we've got even more, probably 4 or 5 societies. But I'm talking about the predominant paradigm of Bosnia. And then like just opening up the space that is, you know, like not immediately divided into 3 is something that's a small revolution for the country. But, you know, like making a real change in people's lives requires changing it from that into something that's gonna affect the other parts of the non-virtual world. And that's basically what we are trying to do. And I don't call myself an online activist. I'm pretty, probably out of everybody who's considered an online activist in Bosnia, I'm probably the least of them all, you know, because I'm really not that even much present online personally. But yes, we try to get as many people into our campaigns as possible, and you know, like we try to combine, because I've started, you know, like working on different issues in Bosnia when, you know, like when you said the word activist, you didn't immediately think of a person with a mobile phone in one hand and a laptop in another. You know, I come from that period of activism, and I slowly evolved into also an activist that actually I do have a mobile phone and a laptop with me pretty much all the time. But and that's how we kind of moved from actually doing everything offline into online. And personally, I think it's all about the strategies. It's all about how what's your final goal and how you actually want, what's the change you want to make. And if you're that's the essence of activism. That's the essence of an activist, you know, like. And I think it's the activists that make the online activism, not the other way around. So like basically, if I really want to, I don't know, for instance, change something. In this case, we want to change the constitution of Bosnia, the campaign that I'm talking about, and we want to change actually the 14 constitutions that we have in the country, in terms of them not discriminating against a big population in Bosnia that they are currently. And actually, I actually want these changes to happen. So like, you know, if there's, I don't know, 1 million people supporting my online campaign, that's not going to be the end of it. You know, like the end of it is going to be when 29 hands are raised in the state parliament, and that is changed. So like, you know, you have to set up the goal for yourself, and then online world is just a tool to get there. You know, like having 1 million photos of people that we'll try to at least have, of people declaring not as one of the 3 main ethnicities in Bosnia, would actually for me be one step towards where I want to be. And I want to be in a non-discriminatory society, you know, like. And that's what we try to do. We've dismissed prime ministers only on online campaigns, and it has been happening, but actually, you know, like, it's actually dismissing them in the real world is what we want to achieve, you know. And I don't know, it's a very complicated thing, and I think that basically what we can conclude is, and what I would like to share is that basically it's all about what you actually want to achieve, and grasping what the online world gives you as an opportunity. It gives you an opportunity to be faster, more approachable to the people, quicker, with less resources. I mean, there are all the advantages that you have, and also you got a place where you can actually have unfiltered and uncensored information, and that's it. You know, like everything else is up to your imagination. We can talk about. I mean, I don't want to like go on now for more minutes talking about the things we've done. I can give you a couple of examples later. Thank you.
Thank you. Of course, all the time, everybody should feel free to wave and comment, ask questions. Maybe more comment. I don't think it's a session for asking questions. Although, if you want to know more about the work being done by these individuals, also feel free to ask. I'm intrigued by a few things I just heard in your short speeches. So you said quite a lot about the real change, and you made it clear that you also treat online activism as a vehicle for this real change. So that's where you are looking at, of course. And both of you mentioned something. I mean, now Darko and Arzu, you made it clear that you don't think of yourselves so much as online activists, right? Arzu, you even said something about being involved, that you are not involved. Wow, I know many people who think they're involved doing 10% of what you do. So that's what I want to discuss a bit more with you. Thinking of many campaigns that happened in Europe, outside of Europe over last year, people sending emails or people clicking that they like something online. These people think or believe that they made change. For example, with ACTA campaign, we as campaign organizers, we did thank to thousands of people who did the clicking, telling them you contributed to this political change, which was the death of this agreement, right? So I really want you to explain more. Where do you see the change? Give examples of the change and how you judge the involvement. Why really is this that you don't see yourselves as activists? When the activism really starts, in your opinions? Of course, it's also for Marek if you want to comment on this.
I'll just be brief. Actually, I said that I consider myself an activist, not an online activist. Because, you know, like most I do is go around, talk to people, go to the media, speak in front of the cameras. That's my majority of my day, you know, like I'm not sitting online and click on things. I don't do that. So I'm not an online activist.
But do you believe that clicking online can bring any change?
Look, it's all about the final goal, and it's about, personally, I think, at least in the society where I come from, it's actually about committing to some sort of either action or a civic courage that can happen online. For instance, like, I don't know, I'll give you finally the example of the Prime Minister, how we managed to dismiss him, and it was totally online. But there was a commitment of a civic courage online by the people, you know, like, so for instance, in this case, there was a graffiti written on a Prime Minister's apartment, well, in the building where he used to live, and this apartment, he got like, through some scheme, never mind how he managed to get it, but he got it for 450 euros, center of the city, a big, I don't know, 150 square meter apartment. And actually it was a graffiti saying, give back the apartment, you thief. And actually he raised like hell. He was interrogating people, he was taking them into police, he was even speaking on the parliament, like saying that his safety is in danger and whatever. And we just made a plain and simple Facebook group saying I wrote the graffiti, you know, and like we put the police numbers, police emails on the group, and there were like in 2 days there were 10,000 people declaring that they wrote the graffiti, calling the police, writing emails to the police, and that in overdue time. I mean, then the people collected money for billboards, people collected money for T-shirts. There was half of the country wearing T-shirts. I wrote the graffiti all over. So like it was online activism, but you know, like it was the commitment for civic courage, you know, like that people did online, and it was a good way. I mean, like it was easier for them to commit online to that civic courage than it was, for instance, for the people in the Nashville sit-ins to go actually and get beaten up by the police, you know, like. So I think that's where the advantage of online is, you know, like it's easier to commit to civic courage online than it is in I mean, it's maybe a step to actually really commit into it, and that's That's in this case, like actually after a month, he didn't resign himself, but after a month his party made him resign. So like he resigned in the end. And what I'm guessing that it's just, you know, like a tool to make it all easier, you know, like, and that's why I think it's actually even great, you know, to have it, but at the same time you need to think of a strategy how to utilize that in order for things to change, you know, like in terms of in the case of ACTA and other campaigns like that, it's all about, you know, like us as a society committing that if you don't make that decision, we're going to make the final step and dismiss you from the position. But that's going to happen in the real life because we are going to go to the polls and vote on it or whatever. You know, so it's like, it's actually, it requires some sort of a commitment of the people in order for it to be translated into real world.
Well, I absolutely agree. I think the commitment part and the organizing part, I see online media and online activism as obviously not a one size fit all type of thing, and I feel like every country is different, and of course it's used by different means in different ways. But I read somewhere recently that this whole phenomenon of online media is really about showing the community that there are people who are engaged and kind of initiating more engagement on actual community level and getting people involved. And this is why I feel like I'm not doing 100% job as an online activist. If I describe myself an activist, because while I write online and I ask people to be more outspoken, I still can't. I don't do door-to-door campaign. I don't go and speak to people. The people I speak to are the people that I meet at conferences or at meetings or at social media trainings that I do. And I feel like this is where I as an online activist, if I am an online activist, I'm lacking the access to the public, because I also live abroad, and sometimes I feel like people would probably even criticize me for being a blogger in the first place. I'm sure there are people back home who think, oh, it's easy for her to speak. You know, she's not even in Baku. But and myself to explain myself, I tell myself that, okay, I've been writing, I am writing, and I will continue writing, and that's what's important for me, because I am a writer. And this is my job as an activist, to give the message, to share the message, to share the grievances of people, and make sure that that part of activism, that part of online activism is alive. And whether it's online or offline, it's not a matter of differentiation.
Thanks.
Can I just add one thing to that, which is for me it's more about, are you doing online activism or are you online activist? The differentiation is here quite important, because I think modest people would say, I'm doing online activism, but I'm not online activist because I do also other things. So I don't need a microphone, I can use your microphone maybe, and it's going to be better for everybody than just you guys here. So what I said, you can do online activism, you don't have to be online activist if you don't want to define yourself, because that's an invitation. I don't mind if somebody who only once ever in their life click on something and that was part of a mobilization of a group would define themselves as at this moment they were online activists. Excellent, they should be, and we should encourage people to do that. And I also think when you talk about from the other side looking at this problem is that when you do online activism, you may also do it wrong, but it may still be successful. And there's a great example of farm subsidies, where somebody created the whole system looking at how EU is spending funding on farm subsidies that actually, 200 people looked at. So this is like zero success. But the fact that that exposed the problem was more important than the fact that nobody actually looked at it, because it was out there. And that's what works with online activism.
Okay, so I'm really glad you said what you said, because my last kind of question or comment, and last because I know everything already and now it's your turn to speak, is to try to look at try to ask whether there is a dark side of all this, because I think we kind of agree that online activism can be extremely useful, maybe even extremely powerful if used by the right people in the right way, without building some kind of fetishism around this as if it was the end in itself, right? So there is the bright side, definitely. but what do you think? And I think Marek already started speaking about this, but I want to hear more. Darko, you mentioned exclusion, right? Online exclusion. Some people cannot have access to this tool. So that's the first issue I see. If some people are not visible online and they do not click, but they are citizens and we have a campaign, maybe that campaign excludes important part of political spectrum. Is this a challenge? Or what Marek said, people clicking and feeling, we are activists already. It's so easy, great. Now I can move back to eating pizza and watching video. Do we want that result, and do we have this result? So, what could be, or what are in your mind the negative consequences or the negative possible negative implications of that kind of activity online?
I can start. I think, like, actually, yeah. I mean, you got these individual points that you made that are problematic. But for me, the biggest problem is on the strategy side, because I think that we are neglecting the final goal and the change very much in all of it, you know, like, and on both sides. I think that there's many people who are like, I've been talking to many people about strategizing online, and many of them would just come and tell me like exactly what we've been hearing here, even like is, you know, I don't trust in the whole technology thing. It's just a oversized bubble, you know, that's not going to help, so let's not talk about it at all, you know, like, and that's one of the things I'm feeling like. For instance, like we would be planning some online campaign, and people would be like, okay, I don't want to support you because like that's online, you know, that's not gonna work, and that happens, you know, like, because I think in the discourse it got like so hyped up that actually people stop believing in it, you know, like at least on the some people on the strategy level. And I think it's wrong. I think like it's a great tool and it should be utilized, but utilized in the right way. And then, like, on the other hand, you got people who say, okay, like, for instance, our most important website of the organization has, like, I'll be frank with you, 20 to 30 visits a day. That's nothing. But whenever we publish something with the name of our, and that's the old famous Truthometer, but whenever we publish something and whenever we do a press conference, every single camera in the country is there, you know, like, so you know, and that, you know, that whole story about, you know, like, okay, we've got 1 million hits or like, you know, 10,000 hits, you know, like, it's all about what actually want to achieve with it. And you know, for some reasons and for some goals, it's important to have that. But in some case, for instance, for us, you know, like, you know, most people go online, you know, every day to do something other than look at the party promises. But if they look at it once a year or once in every 4 years, that can be enough for some substantial change, you know, like, so, you know, we need to really consider, you know, like what's in each and very specific in each and very specific thing you do, what's your final goal, and we don't do it, you know, we just judge it by the number of clicks, we judge it by the number of people who liked something or whatever, you know, like, and that's I think one of the biggest threats to online activism we have. And then there's the access, there's everything, you know, like we for instance, I can tell you that we as an organization have like a mobile computer lab that we actually, on every of our campaigns, we go out to distributed areas, to remote areas, and actually we just, like, you know, put it up, have a, you know, like Wi-Fi there of any kind, and like let the people who don't use it use it. Even we have assistants for people who don't use computers so that they can actually use our tools. So, like, you know, we're trying our best to fix these problems, but, you know, like, it doesn't always work.
Sure. I see one of the dark sides I see is that the kind of I don't know how to term it, but for example, you as an organizer create a event on Facebook, and there are a lot of clicks by the people who think that by clicking they're active now and they can go back to eating pizza and watching TV. And so you see a number, thousands and thousands, and then when the actual event comes, there are only hundreds at best. That's one of the dark sides I see. The other dark side is the whole bubble of the positive image that's drawn in the media. Like with the Arab Spring, for example, when a lot of international media said, oh, it's thanks to Facebook, it's thanks to Twitter, but no, it's actually thanks to 5 year and more probably years worth campaigning on behalf of Egyptians, on behalf of Tunisians, to actually mobilize people around and actually do the door-to-door campaign, actually go out and speak to people and go back over and over again when they would realize that, for example, they weren't convincing enough. So it's that element that I feel like is important, and also something about looking into the government officials' eyes and that being more effective. I absolutely agree with you, except I feel like back home, it's to look into government officials' eyes. It's actually pretty difficult because none of the officials would come and face you. So they sent police forces to face you instead. And you can't really look into the police officers' eyes because what we saw in the last protest is that when our friends actually went out to the police officers to ask them to join the people, they would get beaten up and thrown into cars and taken to district police stations. And so but then you have the online activists reporting on this and getting the news out. And so it was this kind of the dark side, but then also the bright side, because what was happening, what was organized online, still, if there weren't that many people showing up, it was still being back reflected online on Twitter and followed by other international media. Like we were asking international media to focus more on the events in Azerbaijan because of the dark side of what was happening, because of what was organized through online media. Yes.
So I would like to answer you 2 questions. So the first one, do you have to be 24/7 an activist? Forget the online bit. Or is it okay to be 5 minutes a day an activist? And you call it, sometimes a coach activist, because you're just sitting and clicking, looking at the screen. And what would be your answer if somebody said, if you're not 8 hours a day an activist, then you're a loser, go home? Would that be the right answer? I don't think so. I think any click is important in that constellation. I don't think you should be judgmental. But when you talk about the dark side, I would talk about 3 risks that are coming with using technology, not necessarily online. Because the first one is to what you exposing yourself with the easiness and ubiquity of using new tools. So you get the camera and you go to the front line of a protest and you start filming and you're becoming a witness. But then from witness you're turning into a documentalist, and the protest turns into war, and it actually has an impact on your life that is much broader and greater than you were ever expecting. And that's a risk that is personal, that nobody's talking about. So you can easily get into that, but it's very hard to get out of it. And you may actually die in between. And the second risk is that you're so excited about this new media and new technology that you're starting collecting a lot of data. And the example here would be for example, from Syria or Egypt, where you have, 40 terabytes of video footage of atrocities and so on. And what you're going to do with it? Those are hundreds of thousands of hours to watch, and you have to prepare this evidence and data to be useful for you in 10 years, when maybe it's going to end up in the International Criminal Court of Justice. And so that's this kind of engagement. And the last risk I want to mention here quickly, there's more of them, obviously, is that when you act online, you not only act in your name. You can't exist without a network. So when you act online, and you may be the top activist that is protected by your name, organization that is behind you, you're also part of the network where you're exposing people who don't have such a backup. And you have to, in my opinion, think twice. What is your responsibility for these people? So that would be the kind of, I would say, qualities of risks that we should look into when we talk about digital, not necessarily online, because a lot of these tools, they end up online, but they are actually digital first.
Okay, thank you very much. So we have a lot of arguments, points of view, and I think it's perfect time to hear what you have to say on all this. And I see already Jeremy has something to say, but there's more. That's great. Go on.
Yeah, I was trying to think as well on why, like the panelists, I don't consider myself an online activist. And I think I found maybe what is the bug in this phrasing of the problem. Somebody said that, and we are used to hear it. but I think it is fundamentally wrong to speak about an online world and the real world. There is only one real world that includes online and offline. So we're activists, and we have online capability. Like when we got phones, we just could project our voice kilometers away, which wasn't possible before. Now we got online capability, so we can communicate multi-dimensionally, globally, universally. So it is just about managing this capability and including it into our plans or schemes or strategies or tactics, and inventing the new interactions between people who are just using this online capability and the people who, like us, are on the ground, on the field, sometimes in the parliament, threatening people if they don't give us the current version of the compromise amendment, so we can then leak it and do a peer-to-peer analysis of them. So it is about, I think, inventing those interactions, as well as inventing modes of participation. Those bite-sized action that the couch potato activist, the clicktivist, could do 5 minutes a day to gain tremendous momentum to whatever we can do back on the field. So I think this is the key problematics.
So in your opinion, the clicktivism, it's a positive thing without any negative backlash to this? Is it?
Well, if we manage to have this clicktivism be useful to our cause, I mean, clicking a Facebook event to say I will come when people don't feel like coming is useless. But you're familiar, Kasia, with Python, this web-based tool we developed. We select a list of target members of the European Parliament when we think it is the people to call at that moment. And somebody comes and got one of them elected at random, can choose to get another one and just click call now. Or enter his or her phone number and get called back to call for free. So in 5 minutes, anyone can just make one phone call. There are links to the key documents. I think that somebody can spend 5 minutes, make one phone call, and then do something else, which is much more helpful than clicking a few.
Certainly, but then how do you discourage the wrong collectivism, meaning I come to the event where I don't come, and encourage this kind of engagement, which costs much more effort, and I think it already involves some kind of civic courage to confront, because at the end of this pipe phone, you have to confront a real person, right? And I'm quite sure that in ACTA campaign, you received much less numbers of people joining this tool than people just clicking on Facebook. I can give you Polish example where immediately within a week on Facebook we had, not we, but there were many events. We had, like 500,000 people, something like that, spontaneously clicking. And then after 3 months, we repeated this campaign consciously. We wanted these clicks because we wanted to show to the media it's still there, the topic. And the numbers, they went down by 100% or more, like maybe 3,000, 5,000. I mean, it was tremendous. The same topic, 3 months difference, the same tool, the same click, right? That's yet another proof that clicking sometimes can be extremely empty and can even lead to kind of misinformation for us as activists who hope for support, which we don't get when the topic is about to really blow up.
Three things that inspires me, if I may, and I'll let the microphone go, I promise. First of all, the great internet is big, so there is room for each and every tactics. So some people can just click Facebook if it's the only thing they want to do, as long as we have other means of participation. If we have the 1 millisecond clicktivism, the 1 second clicktivism, the 1 minute, the 10 minute, the 1 hour, then people can choose. The key is probably to keep inventing and reinventing what we do, because the same campaign won't work twice. And also in that specific example, if you do your own petition website and system, then people don't see the numbers before you want to publish them, so it may not be seen as a failure if you just manage to. So not trusting Facebook.
Okay, there were other voices somewhere.
Hi, This is Milena from Transparency International. I really have to disagree that it's a dark side. I think that clicktivism can be positive if you know how to capitalize on it. For example, if people click on something, it means that they have at least a remote interest, right? So we as organizations have to understand what to do with that. I just think that maybe we're not there yet, or not all of us are there yet. Like, I work in anti-corruption, and really my specific question is, many people report corruption online, but how can I get from having people to report corruption online to having people not ever paying bribes again? So how can I get some sort of online activism, some sort of commitment which is quite superficial sometimes, to some commitment which is much, much more meaningful and can really bring change? So what is our role as activist organizations to bring this kind of superficial activism, this kind of show of hand, I'm interested in your cause, to something really more meaningful? And I think he's right. I think we have to keep reinventing ourselves and keep the lines of communications open with these people, and not think that they are there only when we need a show of hands, and that's everything we ask from them. So how can we change our asks? What can people really do for us instead of just clicking or something?
So, if in the same row. So, from what I heard here, like, I learned a lot, and it structurized whatever I was thinking, that online activism works only if you have like a very solid background in like years and years of working, or you can have an action, you can be passionate about something, and then you get angry, and then you invite your friends on Facebook, and it like start to grow and grow and grow. And then it makes a change, but somebody needs to take care about this change. And usually after this very big bubble, there is an organization who either takes care of this cause or is just established to take care of this cause. So there is always like a long-term relation to the cause, either in the beginning and then after, or either after. Because otherwise it's just whatever media are catching. Like, they're very happy, okay, there is like a teenager that is just unhappy with the bank account, and now she changed it. And what else? Like, there will be a lot of other teenagers that won't get help around it. So if there is an organization, like an owner, like actual owner, who can work a few hours a day, not necessarily like a job, but who can spend some time around it. So, and this is mostly a silent work. This is like a website that has like 20 entries a day. And it's not a firework at all. However, if there is a need, like, people can engage. But usually, like, from my experience, the psychology of people is that we like to engage once in a while and then to go back to the couch. And it's not bad, it's just normal.
I'm sure there are more comments.
So I actually have a question to Kasia. When you mentioned the decrease in interest in a case after 3 months, did you consider the role of media, traditional media, in also making the cause important and kind of loud? And I have a question from this to all of you. How do you see the role of media, traditional media, which we actually have kind of double vision? On one hand, they very often portray maybe not really accurate picture of online activism. On the other hand, very often I see no one is coming, or few people are coming to our website, but then when we want to say something, there is a lot of cameras. And the traditional media appears very often in this discussion. And I'm also puzzled still how much we still do need the traditional media, or are new media taking over. And I just wanted to hear the view from activist point of view, how you see the role of media.
Thanks. We will comment definitely, but maybe let's take more comment.
Just a comment to back up what was said over in the centre there by the anti-corruption campaigners. It's a question of separating out the signal from the noise in terms of what people do online. It's not that 40,000 people saying they'll attend a Facebook event is completely pointless. It's what does that actually mean in practice? How do we manage to draw some sensible conclusions from that? And the difficulty is seeing this, and I've seen this from the other side when I've been working with politicians who've been on the receiving end of these sorts of things, enormous Facebook activities, mass email petitions, those sorts of things. It's very, very difficult. What does 10,000 emails sent to a member of the European Parliament actually mean? You know, as opposed to 10 letters, 1 phone call, a public action outside the parliament with a load of protests on the street. 20 or 30 years ago, it was much easier to work that out, and there were rules of thumbs you could do as a politician to say, okay, this is an issue which is important. If you recruited this number of people to a political campaign, that would mean, okay, 1 in 10 of them would actually then take some further action. It's just that much more complicated now. That's not to say that the Facebook signal of saying I'm going to attend an event and it's not going is pointless. It's just we don't know, or we don't have an accurate way and means of measuring that point just yet.
Any other comments right now? Okay, then I'm happy to take this question. But before I answer, I want to use the last comment to bring one more problem. What we communicate in these events, let's use it as a symbolic form of online activism, the Facebook event or some kind of message that people click on, I like it, I attend, whatever. I think that the crux of the matter is that we really have to simplify. Usually we have to simplify what we want to say to politicians in this message so that we get these high numbers. And maybe that's the real problem, because exactly as you said, what does it mean? It means something, but what does it mean? It's extremely difficult to draw conclusions, not just because it's a new medium for all of us, but also because we don't really know what these people understood from our message, right? And ACTA, in all its power, was a very good example of this confusion. Many people didn't know anything about ACTA, but they knew one thing: we care about internet. So it became a very powerful symbol for some kind of engagement in favor of a free internet. But everybody defined the free internet slightly differently, I would say. And maybe this is, now I'm coming to answering your questions about dropping in numbers in Poland. I don't know why exactly it happened, but there are many reasons, and I think you are right, because the mainstream media picked that up. People could have feel that this is all sorted and we don't have to show our interest anymore because it's sorted. They were very wrong, because politicians, they use that argument that people are no longer interested as a sign of the fact that they were convinced. So we as activists, we had to face a very strong argument in Brussels. See, nobody in the streets. Apparently, our explanations were enough. Now people believe that ACTA is cool. And they no longer fight with this. So that was the trick that people in the streets didn't know, because the mainstream media represented the whole thing as a victory. 3 months, 5 months before it was a victory. So there is a lot of problems in making this communication channel work both ways. But also what I feel, people realize after 3 months how much more complicated the issue was than what they thought back then, clicking I like it. They realize, oh, it's something long, complicated, it's not really about free internet, or maybe it is, I don't know, I'm confused. So, you know, the more information we give, the less numbers we get. Maybe we get the best people, the people who really understand, but the numbers won't be that impressive. So there are many issues I see like that, but I let you answer.
So very quickly, I don't have an answer, I'm sorry, but I have some comments to your comments, if that's okay. So there were 3 categories of comments. One was about the role of media, old and new, all this kind of debate that's been going on for the last 5 years. The other 2 were about the role and the value of clicktivism, and Milena asked the question about the responsibility of somebody who is proposing to collect something, and it's collected, and then what's going to happen. So the media thing is that's a very interesting debate, but I think if you're a good journalist, you are a good journalist, equally good as good blogger or good activist. If you're a crap journalist, you're a crap journalist and corrupted, and you may be crap activist as well, because you politically inform and don't care about anything anyway, and nothing. So I don't think the debate between new and old media has any value. I think the value is who is doing doing good job in gathering evidence and putting it out there. So I think media can be fantastic amplifying tool for activists if there are clever people there. That's what it's all about, I guess. So that's kind of answer, not just comment, I guess. Milana, to you, to the transparency question, I think the answer here is the strategy. When you ask question to collect something, you should kind of predict what you're gonna do with it when it comes down to 7,000 records of corruption, and then what? It's your responsibility when you asked to do something with it. And when it comes to the clicktivism, I think my comment is twofold. One is that I believe that emotional participation is extremely important. You don't have to be activist, but if something move you to click on it, you're already participating, and you don't have to turn into activist. You may in some time, but you are an important node. And the second part of this comment is, when you use online tools, you need carriers. Information doesn't spread itself. You need somebody to move it on, either to Twitter or Facebook or other peer-to-peer networks and so on. If people won't sit behind the computer and click on it, that won't be distributed. So you need people who click. Please do click.
Well, my opinion on all three counts that it's also very complicated, and I agree totally with the media opinion that you have, and like it's about actually, I'm not even myself anymore referring to the new and traditional media at all, because like I don't know if internet portals are anyways like new media or traditional, this, that, so I'm kind of like, what happens is that, like if we do something on our 20 visits a day site that's actually interesting and it gets traction on the social media, probably in an hour it's going to get picked up by a big portal, and then big portal gets it on, and then there's like, I don't know, tens of thousands of views of that, and then like eventually tonight it's going to be on the news. And that happens a lot, like to us. And like, but if it's not interesting, it's gonna stay with 20 people that we have on our website. So like, that's how I think of what we do in terms of the media. And in general, like if it gets up, it gets up. If it doesn't, like, you got to rethink your strategies. And it's also about the strategies with the clicktivism. Like if it's like, for instance, this campaign we are doing, it will be a campaign of people posting photos with beautiful signs. I don't want to be whatever, or I want to be this. And then like, we'll have 100,000 to 200,000 people, and that's basically, just a little bit more than clicktivism. It's actually taking a photo and sending it. But what we will claim with it is, on 2014 elections, we'll claim that all these 200, 300,000 people, 500,000 people, I don't know how many, are going to basically give their vote to a party that will end constitutional discrimination in Bosnia. And it's a very brave claim. Like, I don't think that it's going to happen, but, like, if you make a brave claim and you have the credibility that we have as an organization back home, or as a group of organization, it's going to happen, like, and that's how that's exactly coming back to actually building your strategy about that, around that click, saying, okay, these people, by clicking here, committed to this, will do this, like, and like, but you'd better be prepared for somebody calling your bluff. If they call your bluff, then you better make it happen, because if you don't make it happen, you lose your credibility for the rest of the time. And that's, like, so it's all about reinventing the strategies, but, like, you need to be clear that once you commit to something, you better make it happen in the end. That's at least our example. I mean, I don't know, maybe somebody has other examples.
On the question about traditional media, yeah, it's better. On the question of traditional media, it's, again, something I said earlier on about the differences of countries and the contexts. And, sometimes traditional media can also be very discouraging. The way, for example, they could use the online media and be anti-online media, anti-online activists, anti-bloggers. In our country, it's a very popular tradition. It's traditional media is known for a very critical approach to anything online, starting from Facebook. They've gone as far as to broadcast on prime time of the psychological side effects of using Facebook, that you could get sick, or you could get psychologically disturbed if you use Facebook too much. And given that kind of context, traditional media becomes very kind of, okay, we don't refer to traditional media and we use online media. But going back to what you said about if you're good as a traditional journalist and traditional media journalist, you will be good online. I absolutely agree. And this is why our traditional journalists are not really good in online journalism, because they're not good journalists in essence working for the traditional media sources. And the same with online papers. We don't have that many online like news resources, but those who do, those that we have are good in what they do. They're good bloggers, or they're good citizen journalists, let's say. About the question about the comment on the anti-corruption reports and how to use it, it's a matter of like follow-up that usually comes up in many of the projects. Is that okay? You launch something, and then you get a response, but then how do you follow up on that? And in this particular case, the fact that there are people reporting is already good. Whether they actually are engaged themselves in corruption or not, that's the next step to ask or address, or do something like one report, one no corruption attempt. Like if you're reporting this, that you must take responsibility in not paying bribes. Did I miss? And I'm trying to think of anything else that was mentioned, but yeah, it's contextual. I mean, there's so many different things, and all the countries are different. And when I look at my country, yes, every click is important because activism has been dead, and whatever is happening now is good, even if it's just one click and then going back and sitting on a couch. The fact that whether it's good or bad, it's also still under kind of developmental part, because on one hand, it's good that it's happening, but then on the other hand, like I gave the example of planning an event, you get 10,000 people saying we're coming, but only 1,000 shows up at best, and half of them get arrested. That kind of kills the message. But the thing is that it's good that all of this is happening. And coming from Azerbaijan, I feel like it's becoming an important part of a lot of the changes that are happening. In the past months, what I was telling about the protests, the fact that they're happening, the fact that they're reported online is a huge thing. The fact that people are becoming more outspoken about this it's a huge thing. And I'm just curious to see how it's going to evolve and see what's going to happen. Thank you.
Okay, many thanks. We have like last 3 minutes, so that's the very good time for your summaries or final comments if you have some. I see one. Do we have a microphone?
Hello, my name is István Takács. I'm from the Hungarian Civil Liberties Union from Hungary. And I just would like to advertise tomorrow's session and invite everybody to continue this discussion there, because tomorrow I will do a workshop about online advocacy, and it will be mostly about video advocacy, how the Hungarian Civil Liberties Union is using online videos to inform people and mobilize people and try to get people involved in not just clicking, but we think that clicking is really good, but also in actually doing something for change. And we're going to show a lot of movies tomorrow and discuss these together. So if you come, that would be nice. Thank you. Okay, that's a valid advertising. Thank you for this. I think I will come because I would really like to discuss more the pros and cons of clicking. Anybody else? Yes.
One more thought about this clicktivism. Well, I think we underestimate the role of marketing here, because the people, especially on the internet, have very short attention span, and well, there are so many funny cats to watch, and if we don't advertise somehow our activities, they will forget about us. Yeah, so. Okay, that's a call to action. Okay, one quick one, because now we really have to wrap up.
Katarzyna Szafran, homofaber. Czy mogłabym po polsku? I poproszę o przetłumaczenie. Ja mam takie przeczucie po tej dyskusji, rozmowie tutaj, że zabrakło mi jednej rzeczy. na Facebooku ludzie klikają w króciutki pasek, na którym pisze lubię to, I like it, prawda? I właśnie myślę, że u podstaw tego klikania leży głównie jakaś emocja, która wywołuje w człowieku, dane wydarzenie wywołuje w człowieku i że my, mam wrażenie, czasami przeceniamy to klikanie z tego właśnie powodu, że człowiek w danym momencie poczuje coś, kliknie, że to lubi, a za te 3 miesiące, tak jak u ciebie, Kasiu, on już się tym tematem może nie interesować, on już może nie chcieć w tym uczestniczyć. Także to też trzeba tak wyważyć, na ile to klikanie jest związane z jakimś taką postawą, za którą by poszło działanie. I ja jestem w Homo Faber fundraiserką. Moja praca polega głównie na nawiązywaniu relacji, budowaniu relacji. I myślę, że aktywność online nie zastąpi prawdziwych relacji z człowiekiem face to face. Kiedy można mu popatrzeć w oczy, zobaczyć jego uśmiech, posłuchać jego głosu. Także to wszystko ja popieram, owszem, bo sama też jestem facebookowiczką, klikam i tak dalej, robię różne rzeczy na internecie, ale jednak myślę, że relacje z człowiekiem są takie osobiste, personalne, dużo ważniejsze.
Dziękuję bardzo. Thank you for a very good comment, and I think for me it's a very good conclusion. Actually, that's how I would summarize this discussion. That behind the click, there should be something more. If we are able to mobilize people to have this, to feel or do this something more, like you described, you know, some kind of commitment, civic commitment, some kind of courage that I take some risk, or the click. It can be just a click, but it really means something more than this 1 second of online activity. Then we have a success. If we are not able to, with our campaign, to move beyond that, then we are in trouble, and we can actually divert energy from more meaningful actions, like documenting, like giving your own example, and so on. Okay, but that's the last word from me. We can have 1 sentence summary if you feel like doing so, and we wrap up really.
Restrain yourself from clicking for next 5 minutes and meet us in the foyer, and let's continue face to face.
Okay, I mean, I said pretty much everything. The only thing that I can maybe repeat is that actually, you know, it's all about the strategy and the goal. And if you're an activist and you know where you're heading, and then, like, you know, you just use the tools, and one of the tools that's available and that's great is actually the internet.
Yeah, I would say the same for us, and it has been really important in sharing the news about Azerbaijan. And so I would really ask you to continue following, if you're not following, what's happening in Azerbaijan, and join us tonight after the event in front of the Azerbaijani embassy in Warsaw to protest the recent detentions and arrest of the activists. Thank you. Outside of internet, exactly.